Okay. Deepthi and Abhijit, എങ്ങനെ പോകുന്നു preparation? നമ്മുടെ കഴിഞ്ഞ സെഷനിൽ we discussed a little bit about determinism and possibilism. Okay, ഈ ഒരു ഷോർട്ട് സെഷനിൽ we are going to discuss various paradigms of geography. അപ്പോൾ paradigms of geography as a discipline, ഏതൊക്കെ paradigms ആണ് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കലായിട്ട് ജോഗ്രഫിയിൽ ഫോളോ ചെയ്ത് വരുന്നത്, ഇപ്പോൾ ഏതൊക്കെ പാരഡിംസ് ആണ് കണ്ടംപററി ആയിട്ടുള്ളത്. അപ്പോൾ എന്താ ഒരു പാരഡിം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്? PARADIGM. പാരഡിം ഇസ് മോർ ലൈക്ക് a broader approach towards a subject or towards a certain thing. അതിനെ നമ്മൾ തന്നെ പാരഡിം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ നേരത്തെ കണ്ട ലാസ്റ്റ് വീഡിയോയിൽ we looked at determinism and possibilism. No, determinism and possibilism are two paradigms. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ there are quite a few other paradigms in geography which have evolved in recent times. We already seen that the ancient period, right till you can say 1850, it was a period of determinism, right? 1850 vareyum, right from ancient period, from the Greeks, Romans, right till 1850. 1850 എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ഓർക്കണം റിട്ടറും ഹംബോൾട്ടിൻ്റെയും പീരീഡ് വരെ. അതിനുശേഷമുള്ള ഒരു 100 years, 1849 to let's say 1950, that was the time of dual paradigms. See, രണ്ട് പാരഡിംസും സൈഡ് ബൈ സൈഡ് നിന്ന ഒരു കാലഘട്ടമാണ്. ഇൻഫാക്ട് ഇൻ ടോട്ടൽ there were 4 paradigms in that period. കേട്ടോ, അതിലെ ഏർലി ഫേസ് ഓഫ് ദിസ് പീരിയഡ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നമുക്ക് ഏർലി 1920s ഒക്കെ വരെ, 1930, initial 1930 വരെ, that is 1850 to 1930, we had 2 paradigms parallelly running through. One is determinism, the other is possibilism. അപ്പോൾ ഫ്രഞ്ച് സ്കൂൾ ഓഫ് ജോഗ്രഫി ഒക്കെ ഒത്തിരി ഡെവലപ്ഡ് ആയി. അത് that has started to influence American school of geography as well. So these two, if you look at the United States, in California for instance, University of California and all, it was mostly the deterministic approach, you know, given by Ellen Semple and all that, okay, which were running. But if you look at the eastern side, eastern United States, in various universities, that is, they have started following the French model of possibilism. അപ്പോൾ ഏർലി ഫേസിൽ ഇത് രണ്ടും നടന്നിരുന്നു. കമ്മിങ് ടു ലൈക്ക് 1930s, അപ്പോഴേക്കും നമ്മൾക്ക് അറിഞ്ഞിരിക്കണം ഗ്രിഫിത്ത് ടൈലറിൻ്റെ, ഓസ്ട്രേലിയൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഗ്രിഫിത്ത് ടൈലറിൻ്റെ സ്റ്റോപ്പ് ആൻഡ് ഗോ ഡിറ്റർമിനിസം ഒക്കെ വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞു. അതിനുശേഷം ദ സെക്കൻഡ് ഫേസ്, ദ ലേറ്റർ ഫേസ് ഓഫ് ദ ഡുവൽ പാരഡൈം, റൈറ്റ്? ഈ പീരീഡ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ 1850 to 1950യുടെ ആ ഒരു പീരീഡ് ഹാസ് ബീൻ ഡിവൈഡ് ഇൻ ടു 2, ആൻഡ് ദാറ്റ് ഏർലി ഫേസ് ആൻഡ് ലേറ്റർ ഫേസ്. ഏർലി ഫേസിൽ ഡിറ്റർമിനിസം ആസ് വെൽ ആസ് പോസിബിലിസം വാസ് ഇൻ ദാറ്റ്. The later phase had 2 paradigms again. അതിലൊന്ന് കൾച്ചറൽ ഡിറ്റർമിനിസം എന്ന് വിളിക്കും. കൾച്ചറൽ ഡിറ്റർമിനിസം ബൈ കാൾ സോയർ, SAUER, കാൾ സോയർ, കൾച്ചറൽ ഡിറ്റർമിനിസം. രണ്ടാമത്തേത് ഏരിയൽ ഡിഫറൻസിയേഷൻ. നമ്മുടെ സിലബസിലെ, ഹ്യൂമൻ ജോഗ്രഫി സിലബസിലെ ആദ്യത്തെ വേർഡ്, ആദ്യത്തെ ടോപ്പിക് ഇതാണ്, ഏരിയൽ ഡിഫറൻസിയേഷൻ ബൈ ഹാർട്ട്ഷോൺ. ഹാർട്ട്ഷോൺ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ അമേരിക്കൻ ജോഗ്രഫറിൻ്റെ ഏരിയൽ ഡിഫറൻസിയേഷൻ. അപ്പോൾ 1850 to 1950 we had 4 paradigms in total. In the early phase we had determinism as well as possibilism both together. Then the later phase we had these 2 concepts. One was cultural determinism by Sawyer, and the other was Hartshorne's aerial differentiation. ഇനി ആഫ്റ്റർ 1950s, വേൾഡ് വാറിന് ശേഷം ഭയങ്കര ചേഞ്ചസ് ഉണ്ടായി ജോഗ്രഫിയിൽ. അതിൽ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ചേഞ്ചസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ജോഗ്രഫി ഇതേപോലെ അബ്സ്ട്രാക്റ്റായിട്ട് ഡിസ്ക്രിപ്റ്റീവ് ആയിട്ടുള്ളൊരു സ്റ്റഡി ആവാതെ അതിനെ വേറൊരു വേർഡ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഇഡിയോഗ്രാഫിക് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഡിസ്ക്രിപ്റ്റീവ്. ദാറ്റ് മീൻസ് യു ഡോണ്ട് ഹാവ് എനി ലോസ് ആൻഡ് ഓൾ. There are no parameters which you can actually compare between 2-3 places, right? It is like you are describing a certain region and you are differentiating that region with another region, that's all. But there are no there are no laws, there are no scope for any models, any theorems, any laws in geography. ഇതിന് മുമ്പ് 1950ക്ക് മുമ്പ് ലോസും തിയറംസും ഇല്ല എന്നല്ല എൻ്റെ അർത്ഥം. അത് ജോഗ്രഫിയുടെ മെയിൻ പാരഡൈമായിട്ട് മാറുന്നത് 1950s അടുപ്പിച്ച് ആ ഒരു phase 1950 to like till 1972 we call that the quantitative revolution. ഇതിനെ വേറൊരു ടേമും യൂസ് ചെയ്യാം, positivism. Okay, quantitative revolution where positivism, it's a concept called positivism that is in place. About that in this phase it was like all these laws, there were efforts to actually make all sorts of theories and models and laws and all that. Okay, and there were a few types of quantitative. In fact, there were 2-3 methods which were in practice at that time. One was spatial analysis. Spatial analysis, like system analysis or not. Spatial or location analysis was one. System analysis was also another one. Then we had various other models in geography at that period. 1972, about 1952, 1972 was basically the time of quantitative revolution. We'll go about these topics in detail. Post 1972, there are a few things which are happening. On the across the world, there were many developing nations across the world, right, who got independence around the 1940s. അങ്ങനെ ഒത്തിരി nations ഉണ്ട്, including us. ആ initial time കഴിയുമ്പോൾ, if you remember, our നമ്മുടെ emergency was also in 1975. This was a period, early 1970s was a period of great unrest and great dissatisfaction among people across the world at various levels. For example, in America, in the US, it was the black versus whites and Martin Luther King and all sorts of activities were happening there. In India, we had this emergency thing, concentration of power. People started to rebel against that concentration of power by a certain individual. Right? Across the world, there were dissatisfaction. There was unrest. Youth resorted to violence and extremism, and all sorts of stuff were happening. All sorts of terrorist thinking were developing among the youth, and radicalist thinking were developing among the youth, and all that. That signed a departure, from the quantitative revolution also. There were a lot of issues with this quantitative revolution also. And then as a parallel to it, as an alternative to quantitative revolution, we had various other paradigms that came into being. അങ്ങനെ നമ്മളൊരു 1972 to that period, 1972, after 1972 period, we can actually call that period as a multi-paradigm period, or a multi-paradigm phase, paradigmatic phase, multi-paradigmatic phase, where there were a lot of paradigms in place. One was radicalism, another was behavioralism, right? Then there was welfare approach to geography, right? Humanism, various paradigms were in place. Recently, there are a few other paradigms which are coming in. One is environmentalism, not the environmentalism that we have seen earlier, not that determinism, that really, concern about the environment and all, which started from the 90s and which is still there. Feminism, humanism is still there. അപ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള approaches ആണ്, paradigms ആണ് ഇപ്പോൾ ജോഗ്രഫിയിൽ എക്സിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ജോഗ്രഫിയുടെ പാരഡൈംസ് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ജോഗ്രഫി ആസ് എ ഡിസിപ്ലിൻ ഹാസ് comprised of a lot of paradigms. From ancient ages right till 1850, we had a single paradigm broadly, which was called determinism, and then possibilism started to come in. 1850s to early 1900s, both determinism and possibilism coexisted in various regions. And then on the later phase, that is after 1930 and all that, we had a new paradigm called cultural determinism and areal differentiation by Hartshorne. Cultural determinism was by Carl Sawyer, and areal differentiation by Hartshorne. And post 1950, we had the quantitative revolution, which comprised of location analysis, system analysis, that is geography as a system, various regions as various systems, then models and theories, various other models were developed. And then change happened in 1972, when this quantitative revolution was criticized by many people on various grounds. Those various grounds actually became new paradigms. One is behavioralism, the other was radicalism, the other was welfare approach, and then human approach. So the all approaches were actually came to being around the 70s and 80s. And then contemporarily we have new approaches like environmentalism and feminism, etc. So all these new approaches have actually come in post the 1950s. Geography as a discipline, let's conclude, is still evolving, and we might have new paradigms that are coming in. So as things stand, we have these paradigms. So as part of our paper 1 part 2, we need to understand human geography part. We need to understand the various paradigms that geography gives and who are the proponents of these paradigms. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.